Alaska and the Arctic. There are two what I'd call classic butterflying routes in the Arctic. One is a road called the Dalton Highway that is in Alaska, and another is a road that's called the Dempster Highway, and that's in the Canadian Yukon. And both are dirt roads, many hundreds of miles long, and absolutely fantastic, pristine habitats, beautiful places. Lots of people over the years have collected and taken photographs, and so there's a lot of information about what you can find and where you can find it. I've actually done both of those, 2016 and 2021. Now, from Alaska's point of view, there is a remarkably great resource. There's a field guide to the butterflies of Alaska, and it's based off of the information that Ken and Philip generated over many years. It was published after his death, I believe, but volume 2, or second edition, excuse me, not volume 2, the second edition is really, really good. The first edition, there were some issues with page spacing and when they changed page and stuff like that, and they cleared it all up in the second edition. But even more than that, going to this website, you can download it and get a free copy. And in fact, it's now on this computer. I put a copy on this computer. You can also buy it if you go to this website. There's 4 or 5 places you can order it. And all you got to do is Google Butterflies of Alaska, field guide, and you'll be able to find links for it. It is a awesome reference. And I just want to show you, so here's 2 pages from it. I just picked this one. You don't have to read the text in the upper left yet. I'm going to scroll down and you'll see it. But it's got a lot of text with information about butterflies. It's got pictures, dorsal and ventral of male and female. It's often got adult, live pictures. And as importantly, it shows where the heck the butterflies found in Alaska. So there's just a wealth of information. And this stuff up here, down here, right, it talks about where it is, it talks about what kind of habitat it's found on, talks about what flight period, like this one is late June to mid-July, and that's why we were there for the first 2 weeks of July. This happens to be the butterfly that we targeted on our last trip, and talks about how to identify. So this is a remarkable resource. It helps you answer the question, why would I want to go to Alaska? And if I go, what would I want to go look for? Right? You can go through this field guide and help you answer that question. So in addition to the time of year, what month, etc., you also have to pay attention to what year you go, because those crazy butterflies up north sometimes take 2 years to develop. And so these 8, I meant to push that. These 8 of the 80 species that are in the rep field guide are even years aren't there or are very reduced population. So if you don't care about these 8, it doesn't matter what year you go. If you care about 1 or more of those 8, you want to go in an odd number. So just fascinating to me, but it helps you target it. Again, I was up there in 16 and 19 or 21, and both the even and the odd years were fantastic. More butterflies than you can shake a stick at. So what time of year to go? This is impossible to read, I recognize that, but this is a list of the butterflies that are in the field guide, and each section is March, April, May, June, July, August, September. And it tells you what butterflies are flying, what months those butterflies are flying. So the vast majority of the butterflies, actually, if you take the first half of July, 90 or more % of all butterflies in Alaska fly during those 2 weeks. That's why it's a really good time to pick. You want to pick either the second half of June or the first half of July to get the maximum chance of getting a number of species. If there are specific species that you want to target, you'd look at the flight time and decide, well, maybe I want to come earlier or later because I'm after a specific butterfly. But all of this information is in the field guide, gives you a great opportunity to decide, do I want to go? What do I want to chase? What time do I want to be there? What year do I want to be there, right? Helps with the planning. Now, there are, as I said, 80 resident species. There are 5 strays that are possible, but of those, it didn't line up, but anyway, 14 whites and sulfurs, of which 8 of them are coleus or sulfurs that we never see here in Texas. And there are 32 Beloria, Arabia, and Aeneas, lesser fritillaries, alpines, and arctics, none of which are in the state of Texas. Now, this is obviously if there's people on the web that are in a different state, but this is targeted to the Texans. So there are lots and lots and lots of opportunity. And 50 to 60 of the 80 species can be found along the Dalton Highway, which is why the Dalton Highway is such a great opportunity to chase butterflies. And while I was there, I found 49 of the 80 species, and this just sort of shows what I didn't do as well as I would have hoped was I only got 5 of the 9 Aeneas, but there's 2 of them that I want to go back for that are more middle of June type of thing. So 2 of the 4 that I want to go for are Aeneas. So that sort of is all of the, here's what to decide. Now let's talk about logistics. Let's talk about things to think about if you're making such a trip and why you'd want to make a trip. The first thing is Alaska is huge. We Texans are really proud of the size of our state. This map has been roughly adjusted for the projections, right, the Mercator. Alaska is 2.5 times as large as Texas. So think about it. If you've ever tried to drive across the state of Texas, the 890 miles from Orange to El Paso, you ain't seen nothing, right? It's a huge state, and there's nobody in the state, right? Texas has 115 people per square mile. Alaska has 1 person per square mile. Just for reference, Jeff Davis County is 1 person per square mile. So the entire state is approximately as densely populated as Jeff Davis County, which ain't very populated. So just something to consider. So our trip was from Fairbanks to Dead Horse, which was about 500 miles, like 495 miles. And the majority of those miles, well, that's actually the same distance from here to Amarillo, roughly. So you can, I mean, if you, those of you who like to hop in the car and drive to Amarillo, you'd love this. Gas and civilization. If you think West Texas is sparse and you have to really watch the gas stations and fill up, you ain't seen nothing. You can get gas in Coldfoot and you can get gas in Dead Horse. Otherwise, there is no opportunity for gas. So you do not pass Coldfoot Camp up, and you do not pass Dead Horse up if you think you're going to make it back. So plan, 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 plan. It's incredibly important. And it can actually be deadly, right? So that's why I say make sure that you think ahead, you fill up with gas, et cetera, et cetera. It's not scrolling now anymore. Okay, so this is a picture of the camp that we set up at Galbraith Lake in last July. There were 3 of us that were traveling in the camper. Only 2 of us slept in the camper, but 3 of us were in the camper. And there was one much younger guy who was actually there for a month in his car, and he camped and he tented. And the 3rd guy in our camper actually tented with him during the 2 weeks we were there. But this is, I mean, this camper is a remarkable way to do it, right? It gives you some place to sleep. It gives you some warmth. It gives you the transportation. I personally like that option. It is a little bit more expensive than a car and a tent. I tell you, my bones are getting old. I know I camped a whole lot when my son was in Boy Scouts, and I did it for my son, but he's out of Boy Scouts now, and I'm out of my 50s now. So I personally recommend the camper if you can afford it. So there's 2 options. One is tenting and one is to rent a camper, right? It sleeps 3, et cetera. And both times that I was in the Arctic, we rented the truck and it was the camper, and it was really good. The other thing is plan ahead. You call in February, that might be out already, right? So that they make all their money renting stuff in basically May, June, and July. So if you want to go, you need to plan ahead and reserve ahead. Just think that through. Okay, my favorite part of chasing butterflies in Texas, not. I personally hate snakes.
Oh.
Let me rephrase that. I'm afraid of snakes. I don't know that I hate them, but I am afraid of them. There are no snakes, no poisonous snakes in Alaska. However, there are grizzly bears, There are moose. We saw a whole bunch of moose. There's caribou, muskox. We saw a herd of muskox. And whatever the heck this is, we were trying to debate, was this a coyote? Was it a wolf? I decided it's a chupacabra. I have no idea what, it's an emaciated something. I'm not sure what it is. But this thing is actually hiking along the road, the dirt road that they have under the Alaska pipeline. This is the Alaska pipeline. And for hundreds of miles, there is a wonderful dirt/gravel road that goes along the pipeline that has a lot of butterflies on the flowers that run by it. So a certain number of the butterflies, the pipeline is the place to be. We actually camped on the pipeline, near the pipeline right away for 3 or 4 days, and it's just remarkable. But lots of neat butterflies. So there's dangerous stuff other than snakes. I still was glad not to have to worry about where I stepped. But the bear, I got to talk about the bear a little. This picture was actually taken in the Yukon. I'm sitting on the back of our camper here, and I had hiked down this hill and had been collecting in this willow shrubby filled creek, and I got hungry. So I walked up and I was eating my peanut butter sandwich, and I looked down and there's a bear where I had been, full-grown male grizzly bear. And he snuffed around and tore up things. And I mean, he was not a happy man, right? So I was glad to be away from him, right? I recommend you take bear spray. You cannot take bear spray on the plane. It's sort of a hazardous material. You can buy bear spray up in the Yukon or up in Alaska, or the place that rented us the trail, the camper would rent this stuff. Right, so they run it to you and they give you your deposit back if you didn't use it. So they wanted to make sure that you were safe as well. We ended up buying it and gave it to the guy that drove up there because he was up there, right? The other thing is you can talk or wear a bell, right? So there was one of the guys that wore a bell, so it made noise at all times. The last thing you want to do is surprise one of these things. And so as I'm walking in an area where I can't see real well, you know, very creative. I just, oh, bear, hey, bear, right? I'd be shouting that just so I didn't surprise a bear. There is, however, I told the guy that wore the bell that there's an old joke that my father told me, right, about black bears and grizzly bears. And how do you tell the difference between black bears and grizzly bears from their tracks and their scat, et cetera? And the answer is, well, grizzly bear scat has bells in it. so it's not clear that the bell will keep the bears away from you, but nevertheless, it gives you a feeling of safety, right? So this is the one thing that I would warn about. It's just bears are at least as scary to me as snakes. So, and we did see a number of grizzly bears. We saw twice as many black bears, but they're, I don't think, quite as aggressive as grizzlies. Be prepared for no darkness. I didn't think about this. This photo is taken at Whitehorse at 11:30 in the evening when we landed. And when I talked to the guy that guided us around the Yukon and said, well, should I bring my lights? And he said, what for? You're not going to have any darkness at all. He said, you cannot collect moths by light up here in June and July. I said, oh yeah, right, makes sense. Just for you to think about, so take a sleep mask. I needed a sleep mask to get to bed because it was bright daylight, you know, at 2 in the morning. Just something to think about. Okay, that's me, and that's the guy that guided us. And we are wearing hats with netting on it. If you think the mosquitoes down along the coast in Corpus are nasty, you ain't seen nothing yet. In parts of Alaska, those mosquitoes can carry you off and suck you dry in a minute, right? So I actually took gloves and I had netting. The disadvantage to this is netting, especially with glasses, it fogs up, you can't see squat. So you got to work that out. But there's only one place I wished I had the netting and I didn't have it. And I went around a curve, went around a hill chasing an Eskimo alpine. I can't remember the scientific name. I got the female, but I came back with a lot of bites as well. It was worth it. So it's just something I've got this tucked in my, you know, I'm going to the Arctic box next time, so I'll have my net or my netting. And of course we have the axe because we were, you know, cooking by firewood. The other thing, surprisingly, the Arctic can be cold. As a bonehead, I completely forgot sweatshirts, jackets, everything on my trip to Alaska. So, you know, we get up to Galbraith Lake at 5 in the morning, and I couldn't wait. So I am dressed in my night togs, and for night I wear a t-shirt and a pair of shorts, and I hop out of the car and I'm running around the tundra at 50 degrees, chasing these butterflies at 5 in the morning. And darned if I didn't catch Coleus tyche that morning by 7 in the morning. But I realized pretty quickly that it was a mistake to not have a sweatshirt. So when we finally got up to Dead Horse, I went to the store and I bought a nice sweatshirt, and it kept me warm the rest of the trip. It was a lesson learned. Y'all are too smart. You would never go without a jacket or a sweatshirt, but I certainly had forgotten it. And this is a picture just to the west. It's up a hill that you climb just to the west of Lake Galbraith, or Galbraith Lake in the Alaska. Okay, this is the part where I say I'm trying not to talk you out of it, but exercise, exercise, exercise. You know, I love going down in South Texas, finding patches of Eupatorum and finding out what butterflies are going to come to the Eupatorum. And you can pretty much sit there all day and watch them come in. They'll set for you nectaring. You'll find all sorts of Mexican strays. Other than the fact that there may be snakes around and that there are lots of thorns on everything, it's fairly low. It can be fairly low impact butterfly. There is nothing similar to that up in Alaska. It's all pretty rough terrain, and you can hurt yourself. And as those who know me know, I am not the most physically fit person in the world. I was clearly the least well fit of all 4 of us. And I was the one huffing and puffing behind them most of the time. But by God, I got up to the habitat. I chased the bugs. I had a great time. And this picture, by the way, these pictures are in the field guide that was published. I did a copy and paste, right? And so there's an open field. There's these dirt. This is sort of like going along the road that's by the pipeline, right? Walking along a dirt road. There's these spruce bogs that, if you've never been in one of them, they're very spongy to walk in. So it's not like easy walking. It looks easy, but it's spongy. This is also some spongy stuff. Tundra. The tundra can be hard to walk. Whoa.
That's.
Uh-oh, we had a little problem there. So I think the echo is gone. So the tundra is remarkable, but it is incredibly difficult for me to run across to chase butterflies because it's very uneven, it's clumpy, right? You can take a step and drop 2 feet without realizing you've stepped in between 2 clumps of tundra. And but there's really neat butterflies in it, so it's sort of torn, right? There are scree slopes. I mean, there's more mountains, more rocks on mountains that you can shake a stick at, but there are so many neat butterflies that are only on the rocks. And so if you want those butterflies, you've got to go on the rocks. So there I am. So this is actually from the Yukon. And the other comment is, if you can get a guide who's willing to go along with you, who knows where things are, do it. That person is worth his weight in gold. In fact, my friend Kevin and I took the trip, and Andre, who lives in Whitehorse, came with us. And Kevin and I split the costs, and Andre came along for free because he knew where we were going and he knew everything, and it was awesome, right? Well, he drove up Montana Mountain and stopped on this dirt road at a spot where you say, what the heck are we doing here, right? And he said, walk up that area, and we did, and Parnassus eversmani was flying all over. It was incredible. In 5 minutes, we had found eversmani, which is like one of the gems of the Arctic. It was awesome. So he took a picture of me going up and over the hill towards the eversmani location. But again, it's sort of treacherous. You got to be on your toes. You got to have good balance. Here I am again in the Yukon. This is hard to tell, but it's on the side of a mountain, and there's nothing but big rocks. This is the habitat where you find Arabia McKinleyensis, and it is incredibly difficult to go across, but incredibly productive, has some really neat butterflies. I know Kevin and I, when we were in Utah, you go across the same sort of stuff. He'd come in from one side, I'd come in from the other and hope that we'd chase the butterfly to each other, because it is very difficult to go across this quickly without breaking a leg, right? Here is another. So this is, it's hard to tell. If you can't tell, right there is Kevin. So he was well ahead of me. We were already well up the mountain, right? And I just decided I got to take a picture, right? Because I'm not going that high. And it was because I was tired, right? But we were coming along a creek, right? This creek, we found quite a few McKinleyensis in this. That's the habitat you've got to be in for McKinleyensis. So it's spectacular. This again was in the Yukon. The previous one was in Alaska. This is in the Yukon. Very reminiscent. These little streams that come in the valley, on the mountainside. Arabia fly up and down these. This is where you find the Arabia. They're very, very wet sort of habitat. Found all sorts of other stuff, like there's lots of Aeneas, there's lots of Coleus, etc. But you notice one thing that's sort of common in this, in all of the pictures, you're walking uphill. There's a whole lot of hill walking, right? And just get ready for it, right? The only place in town that I think that we can get ready and get prepared is the Hill of Life. So before I go to Alaska next year, I'm planning on doing a whole lot of repetitions of up and down the Hill of Life, because I want to be ready when I get there. This I had to put in there. So this is Galbraith Lake, which is where we were based for about a week and a half, a week of the 2 weeks that we were up there. And it's hard to tell, but this is the road. That's the Dalton Highway, and that's the pipeline. So the pipeline and the Dalton. So we had hiked all the way up here. The others went a bit higher. I decided not to go much higher. But over here is the campground. On the other side of the lake is the campground that we camped at. And it's just, I mean, beautiful, beautiful habitat, right? Beautiful views, lots of neat butterflies. Again, my friend Kevin, when we were here, he sat down on a rock to transfer some specimens from his killing jar to his envelopes, and I think it was an Aeneas borer, crawled out, had just hatched, crawled out from under the rock and was sitting there, its wings were expanded. Just so cool, right? What can you say? I mean, it's just an experience you can't pass up. So behind us, uphill quite a ways, is one of the two Arctic wildlife refuges. And you couldn't hike to it, but it's behind us. And over in those mountains, hiking way back, is another one. So we're sort of between two wildlife refuges that it would take a lot of hiking to get to, but the habitat in between, there's just so many neat places in here. Galbraith Lake is just incredible. It's awesome. The other thing that I know I shouldn't have appreciated this, but the other thing I appreciated is apparently not too long ago, the airport put in wireless. So we had cell phone coverage the whole time we were at the lake. So that was kind of nice, right? Text the wife and say, I'm not dead yet, right? That sort of thing. So that was really nice. In fact, the picture that I showed earlier with the camper and the tent, that was at Galbraith Lake across the way. This is again from the Yukon, but this is one of those boggy areas, very marshy, mushy, footing. But there's butterflies. I think we found Arabia mancinus in here, and maybe Judd. I can't remember, but we definitely found mancinus in here. So it's just the sort of habitat you got to hike to. Okay, so now I think we're on to butterflies. Okay, although this is moths. This is a mating pair of the St. Lawrence tiger moth from the Yukon. All the other pictures are butterflies from Alaska that Kyle Johnson, who is the guy who was there for a month, graciously let me use for this presentation. Thank you, Kyle. I don't know if he's out there, but thank you, Kyle, very much. And because I'm not great at identifying, I identified them, I think, and I've got my cheat sheets. So at least I can tell you what they are. The point of this is to show you that even though it's hard to get there and chase them, you can get some awesome pictures, right? This is, I believe, an Aeneas jutta that's there. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful specimen. And there is an Arabia disa. The disa has this white spot here, I believe. So I believe that's a disa.
You have common names too?
Okay, the first is a Jutta Arctic and the second is the Disa Alpine. Yes, I do have it. Yeah. The next one is a Bolaris fritillary, Bolaria polaris, which is a neat butterfly, really neat. And if you look at it, it's got these sort of white hash marks out on the outside and a fairly, remarkable little pattern there. It's a beautiful, there's so many neat Bolarias there. I just, sort of tucked down in the grass. And this one just blends right in. This is, I believe, Aeneas melissa. I believe this is a Melissa Arctic. I just spectacular. You can see it blends right in. So you have to watch it land. But I don't see how you could see it without having watched it land. This is a McKayon swallowtail. That's just gorgeous. I mean, I'm assuming it was fresh out. I don't know, but it's beautiful. It's called I think it's the Old World Stall. That is a grizzled. So this is Purgus centauri. And it's again, one of those last two were two of the four skippers that are found in the state of Alaska. But I think that picture is awesome. For those who don't know me, I am very partial to skippers. I'm a skipper bigot. So I love that photo. This is a Dorcas copper, Lycinia dorcas, I think it is. So the next two are, this is a female and okay, it's no longer accepting me. There we go, gotta go back one. Let's see, can we go back? Yeah, okay, and that is a male. So there's a male and there's a female of the cranberry blue. I think it's Agriades now, Optoleti. This is a Ross's alpine. They've got these two like that. This is Aeneas, no, Arabia Rossi. This is, I think, a La Fontaine's alpine. A mating pair of the Mount McKinley alpine, which this is the one that you got to go over those big rocks I showed you pictures of. So how Kyle got that is just floors me, right? Either incredibly lucky or incredibly patient or both. But a mating pair is spectacular. There's a mating pair of the Freya fritillary. The female is the darker one and larger actually. There is a Astarte fritillary. So Astarte fritillary happens to be on rock-covered mountains as well. And I came awfully close to hurting myself a couple times chasing them. So it's something that you've got to be sure-footed and you've got to be patient to pursue them. In fact, I suspect I know where that one was. This picture was taken. I think he took it while I was up on the same side of the mountain where he was. This is a really cool butterfly. What's it called? The dingy fritillary, Beloria improba, and to me it's beautiful. I love that color. I love that pattern. It's a gorgeous butterfly in my opinion. There's my second favorite, right? The common branded skipper, Hesperia kama. Just a beautiful specimen. And last but not least, the Beloria chariclea, or the purplish fritillary. So I know it's not a long time, right? It was only 45 minutes or so, but that's my talk about the Alaskan butterflies. I certainly welcome any questions or comments.
I kind of missed the first part, Bill. The even odd year. Can you explain that one more time?
Yes.
So the butterflies, some of the species, and let's, okay, I can't go back to it. Some of the species take 2 years to develop. So the summer is short enough that they can't fully develop in 1 year. So they take 2 years to develop, and they've only got one flight. So it's every other year, every odd year, the butterflies fly. And on the even years, the caterpillars are half grown. There are other butterflies that take 2 years to develop, but they've got, if you will, 2 broods, right? So they still come out every year. Even up in Minnesota, up in Wisconsin, there are species where in some bogs it's even years, in some bogs it's odd years, and in some bogs it's every year. It's fascinating with those butterflies. They just take that's so cold they can't develop in a year.
There's a question from the audience there too.
Okay. Yes, the flight chart calendar is in the field guide that was mentioned before. If you go into the catalog and you go through all the listings of all the butterflies, it's shortly after that. So it's towards the end of the catalog. And yes, I borrowed it from the catalog for my presentation. Any other questions or comments? Clarifications, corrections?
I'd just like to say, good job running the hybrid tonight. Very well done.
Yeah,
Who is this person?
yeah. The tech support helped.
Very non-discriminating. Thank you.
So the stone, large, small boulder field, was that a temperature thing or where the host plant is? Why?
I believe it's because it's where the host plant grows. I'm 90% sure. Jim, I see you're out there. Can you answer that question definitively?
Mr. Brock?
No, maybe he's not there. Okay. But my understanding is where the host plant grows, just like Parnassus, right? You climb up and you find the seed, and that's where the host plant is, and that's why the butterflies are. Yeah.
Bill, was your guide someone you knew or just someone you found and hired?
It happens that my friend up in Minnesota, Kevin, knew this person, Andre, in Whitehorse, and was friends with him. And so he wasn't a guide in the sense of we hired him as a guide. He was a guide as in he was really experienced. He knew the habitat. He knew where the butterflies were. And he came along on the trip with us. And because he knew it all, we just decided we'd pay his expenses because it was the right thing to do. So I don't know how you would get a guide if you wanted to go and you weren't lucky and knew someone like Kevin who knew someone like Andre. But even if you can't get somebody along, there are people that know where butterflies are. I mean, it is not a secret where most of the butterflies can be found. I think Beloria natazadi might be one of the species that people try to keep populations secret for whatever reason. But many places, if you go to Butterflies of America, right, if you look at the species, they'll say, you know, kilometer 417.5 on the Dempster Highway. And what do? You go to kilometer 417.5 and you start looking around, or Oil Spill Hill or whatever on the Dalton. So it is possible to find out where to get the butterflies and to be productive.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
What are the logistics of getting the butterfly specimens home?
So,
I mean, that's gotta be complicated.
no, it's not complicated.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'll repeat the question. What in the world are the logistics about getting your specimens home? So from Alaska, you're not crossing international boundaries. It's no problem. You just bring them, right? You have them in envelopes and plastic boxes, and you have the plastic boxes in your luggage, and you bring them. The Yukon is pretty close to the same, except you say you've got, dead agricultural things, right? There's problems from some other countries, right? Like from when I brought specimens back from Peru, fortunately it was on a trip that was sponsored by the Smithsonian, and the head of the museum in Peru took care of the collecting permits, the import permits, the export permits, all the paperwork. So I had the paperwork to bring in because it was all part of a scientific study. But so not all countries can you just bring stuff across the border. But from Alaska, there's nothing. It's just like bringing it from Oklahoma.
The key word, dead specimens.
Yes. Now Alaska, I could bring live specimens from, but out of this country, you're not supposed to bring any live specimens across the borders. And of course, the reason is they don't want to import agricultural pests.
Right.
I mean, it makes perfect sense. In fact, spotted lanternfly and all sorts of other things have come across and have created havoc. Anything else?
I never saw a picture of the road. Are these asphalt roads?
They're dirt roads,
Dirt roads the entire time?
Well, most of the time, if you, the Dalton, when you're on the Dalton and when you're on the Dempster, it's dirt. Getting to them is paved. But, the 400 miles is all dirt / gravel. It is a slow drive. It's not like you hop in the car and go 70 miles an hour up to Amarillo. You hop in the car and you go 20 miles an hour up to Amarillo.
And with dirt or gravel, you have the usual washboarding going on.
And some places the washboarding is really intense, and other places it's only intense. It's a challenge, yes. And your vehicle gets filthy, of course. Right? You gotta wash it. But on the other hand, for those who have butterflied along dirt and gravel roads in the United States, you can butterfly along these dirt and gravel roads, and they're awesome. There is a lot of stuff that you can find just getting out and walking along the road. The one day, so I was, as I said, the least well fit of everybody. And so one day, the other three went up on a robust hike. I mean, a real hike. The one guy wanted to take the other two up and show where he had proposed to his wife his fiance a couple months before. And by common consensus, I wasn't going, right? So I spent the day driving along the road and stopping at a few places, and I got really, really neat butterflies with minimal effort, which I appreciated because frankly, my legs were sore, my feet were sore, my back was sore, right? I needed a good day, right? So it's possible to get a lot of really neat stuff right along the road. But you don't get to see the neat habitat, you don't get to explore, you don't get to find new places. Going in the wild where people haven't been before, or they haven't reported it is a thrill in and of itself.
Communication on this road, if you've broken down.
If you've broken down, you're waiting until someone comes along if you don't have cell phone coverage. I seriously thought about taking a satellite phone. I opted against it. If you're near Galbraith Lake, you're near that airport, you got cell phone coverage. 20 miles away, and for the next 400 miles, you got no cell phone coverage. But on the other hand, there is actually a lot of traffic. There are a lot of trucks that go to Dead Horse and back, right? It's an oil producing location, right? So there's more traffic than you would expect along the road. So it probably wouldn't be a half a day before you were certain to have somebody come along. Well, you know what? Yeah, it's all relative, Mike. Half a day is pretty quick sometimes. Maybe more often than you want to see people.
12 hours or?
Yeah, 8 hours maybe, right? But the other thing is take advantage of Coldfoot. They have a restaurant that serves a heck of a buffet. Take advantage of Dead Horse. They have a restaurant that serves a heck of a buffet. And if you're tired of eating your own cooking, those are two good opportunities. I took the opportunity in Cold Horse to replenish my Diet Pepsi supply. For those who know me, I like Diet Pepsi, and I had sort of run out. Although I weaned myself off of it before I went, but I really wanted to taste it.
So was weather discussed? Did you have any?
I did not discuss weather. That's a good point, Mike. On the Alaska trip, we were incredibly fortunate. Incredibly fortunate. We lost an hour here, half hour there to weather. In fact, when we went up to Dead Horse, we had 2 days of solid sun. And they've said it's never sunny all day, right? You have this fog that comes in off the Arctic Ocean, and it just never. We were incredibly lucky. When we were in the Yukon, however, I can remember sitting in a restaurant at Eagle Plains, which is the equivalent of Coldfoot. It's halfway up there, and eating their meal and watching them celebrate Canada Day, which is their 4th of July, which I think is July 2nd. We were socked in for 3 days with low clouds, 35-degree temperature for 3 solid days. Not a butterfly was flying, right? So we lost 3 days to that. So it all depends on your luck of the draw. But these butterflies are definitely solar powered. If the sun's out, they're flying. It doesn't matter what temperature it is. It can be 45 degrees and they'll be flying. The sun goes down, they go down. It was the exact same thing happened to me when I was at Loveland Pass in Colorado. I hiked up and the sun went behind a cloud. Every butterfly dropped to the ground immediately. The sun went out and they all came up out of it's just incredible, but they're definitely solar powered. It's awesome to watch.
In life almost all day, virtually all day long.
24
hours. Any hour of the day.
I was collecting it 10 in the evening, 3 in the morning, I was usually asleep. But yeah, you can collect any time of day. It's amazing. It is really remarkable.
When do they go to sleep?
Go ahead.
When do the butterflies go to sleep?
What was that?
When do the butterflies go to sleep?
I have no idea. I haven't asked them. I assume some are up at all times and some are asleep at all times, but I really don't know. Yeah. There is one comment I make. I didn't put a picture of it in the presentation, but we sort of went off to the side of a road and down a fairly steep embankment, which was wonderful. There were Mount McKinley alpines there. There were dingy fritillaries. I mean, lots of neat butterflies. But there was also a plane crash. It looked like an ultralight plane had crashed. And there was the tail, et cetera. So you'll definitely find stuff that might be surprising. It was an old plane crash, right? It's not like it had happened recently, but there was a plane that had gone down. It was at Adigan Pass, I think is the name of it. So no telling what you'll find.
So were the sulfurs muddling and you see them coming to scatter?
So
Behaviors?
the similar behaviors to the sulfurs that you would expect, the yellows you'd expect here, except 80% of the sulfurs were basically flying like a bat out of hell, right? They might stop to nectar, they might not. They drop down and land in the grass for a minute or two and hop up and go. So they did go to mud, the males would go to mud, they would nectar, but my God, they fly and they fly fast. Especially, 3 of the species were really fast. The Hecla, the Nasties, and the Tyche were just very fast. And so I'm sure some of the people that were up there to sightsee were laughing as they saw, adult men out of condition running across the tundra with nets, chasing these butterflies that they probably couldn't see from where they were. Probably thought we had lost our minds. And in fact, I felt like I had a couple times. But some of the butterflies just fly and fly and fly. Anything else?
Any more questions from the Zoom audience?
Folks might need, in their Zoom audience, you might need to unmute yourself, which is fine. But you can just speak any questions, or you can type the question at the chat bubble at the bottom if you have that on your screen.
I will reiterate that I strongly recommend people go. It's an experience that you'll never regret. It's awesome. I mean, I'll admit one of the reasons I went is I want to visit all 50 states, and I didn't know when else I'd visit Alaska, but I'm so glad I went. Definitely want to go. And for those who are in the Zoom meeting, sorry, but for those in the room, I do have 3 boxes, 3 drawers of specimens in the back of the room, basically a sample of every species that I collected while I was up there. So.
Oh man, that's what I would like to see. I love your boxes.
There you go. You should have known I was going to bring something.
Couldn't get there tonight.
Yep.
Well, I think I speak for everybody that thank you a lot, Phil. That was a fascinating talk.
Thank you.
I guess we will end the Zoom meeting. Thanks for everybody attending. If you attended,
Good job, guys.
could attend these collections.
Thank you, Bill.
We'll
Good
sign
job.
out.
Good job.
Mhm.
Take care, everybody.